Again, making your choices and your decisions and balancing your personal choices and your professional choices. The biggest thing here is that if you find you're making poor choices, if you're asking for trouble, if you're pushing the system, if you're seeing if it works, if you're seeing if you're going to get caught, you're making poor decisions. You're asking for trouble. So if you find yourself making bad choices and asking for trouble, ask for help.
I've heard the term sensible drinking. What does that mean?
Well, I think it's really what we've been talking about with choices and decisions, to be able to make sensible decisions. Again, knowing that 1 ounce of alcohol takes 1 hour to detoxify. If you have to go to work the next day, you make choices. You may have wine with dinner, you may have a drink after dinner, but you make a choice when to stop. You make a choice about what's sensible, what's appropriate, what makes sense in the situation that you're in.
It sounds like these rules are regulating my private life.
Well, again, you know, to go back to where we started, we're really looking at what's fair for both the individual who's drinking and the individual worker, and what's fair for the safety of the people that are exposed to you in the workplace. Particularly if you're in a safety-sensitive job, if you're operating equipment, machinery, if you're a driver, you know, this is the balancing act. What's fair?
This isn't fair.
We're regulating that you can't have alcohol in your system at work. So it's not, we're not saying you can't bring alcohol, well, we are saying you can't bring alcohol to work in a bottle, but you also can't bring alcohol to work in your body. We're regulating your work activity, and we know how long it takes to detoxify alcohol. We want you in the workplace alcohol-free, which means that before you come to work for 4 hours, we need that period alcohol-free.
So, for example, if I have a cold and take cough medicine that contains alcohol the night before I go to work, would I test positive?
If you take a cough medication with alcohol in it, you have to remember that 1 ounce, 1 hour rule. So if you take it early in the evening, the alcohol will probably be metabolized. But again, we're talking about making good professional decisions. There are a lot of good cough medications on the market that don't have alcohol, that aren't suspended in alcohol. So we're asking you all to be very conscious about the choices you're making about anything that involves alcohol. So you could choose a different cough medicine. And the other thing that we talked about earlier was the effect that alcohol has on your immune system. In some ways, it doesn't make good sense to take a cough medicine if you have a cold or a flu that affects your ability to fight disease. So it's good personal choice to use a different one, and it's a real good professional choice. Why ask for trouble?
If you exceed the O2 or O4 level, what happens to you?
Okay. When you're administered an alcohol test, if you come back between 0.02 and between 0.02 and 0.04, you have to be removed from duty for 24 hours. So there is a 24-hour hiatus from being able to drive before you can return to duty. If you test 0.04 and above, you have to be referred to a substance abuse professional for assessment. So only after an assessment can you be cleared to return back to duty.
This applies to non-commercial drivers as well?
Well, this applies to anyone in a safety-sensitive position. So right now it's talking, this part of the regulation with Department of Transportation is talking about anyone that holds a commercial driver's license.
Yeah, I'm a mechanic in the shop, and I drive just very seldom. If I test drive a truck, am I subject to this testing?
Anytime you're operating the vehicle, you're subject to that testing. So even though it's just a 5-minute road test, during that period of time, you can be tested before you drive, you can be tested during the time you're driving, and you can be tested following the time that you were driving. So just that little bit of time makes you eligible for the testing.
Can an employer have someone tested if there's reasonable cause?
Yeah, as I said, they can test before, during, and after. They can test after an accident if you've been cited for a moving violation, and they can test if there's reasonable suspicion. Now, with the alcohol testing, what that means is that the supervisor has to observe signs of impairment. The supervisor has to see an unsteady gait, smell alcohol, actually have something observable that they can see, that they can document, and then they can request a test. And you need to know that a refusal to test is the same as a positive. If they request the test, you need to submit to the test.
How often can your number come up?
For the random testing. The way random tests are run is to make sure that it's totally random, meaning that there isn't more likelihood of you being tested than anyone else. So if you are chosen out of a random pool this week and your number comes up and you can be tested, and then next month they do another randomization, sometimes people think if their number came up last month, they aren't in the pool again, but then it's not random. So you have just as much likelihood of being pulled every single time they run a random test. Your number is not taken out of the pool once you're tested. So every single time, you have just as much likelihood of being tested as everyone else that you work with. This type of information always causes a lot of questions to come to mind, and you may think of things afterwards that you didn't get a chance to ask. The regulations specify that someone has to be designated in your organization. Ask your safety manager, ask your employee assistance professional, but if you find yourself in the position of making poor choices, asking for trouble, make sure you ask for help.
As Tamara points out, there is that continued balance between public safety and individual rights. Alcohol, even in small amounts, can affect a person's health and work. I think Donna Smith says it best.
It is my hope that in 5 years' time, drivers across this country will be much better educated about alcohol misuse and the dangers associated, again, with even relatively insignificant use of alcohol in relationship to driving will be substantially increased. I do believe that we will see a reduction in alcohol-related fatalities in the commercial trucking industry. I do believe that we will see a reduction in other alcohol-related mishaps that are associated. Why can I say that? Just because, you know, it makes sense? No, that's not the only reason. I think we have some experience from the railroad industry. In the railroad industry, we put fairly comprehensive alcohol and drug regulations in place just following the 1987 Chase, Maryland accident. And we have seen over the years a dramatic change in both the overall accident rate as well as the accidents in which alcohol was a factor, as well as the positive rate when we do post-accident testing for alcohol and controlled substances. I have no reason to believe that the trucking industry is any less responsive to comprehensive programs than we have seen the rail industry. Human life, increased productivity, a safer transportation system for all of us, those are the measures of the benefits of the rule. Not whether or not, from a bureaucratic standpoint, you know, we've accomplished one more regulatory objective.